Play is disappearing from your life, and that is exactly why your brain is aging faster than it really should. Sure, workouts matter, nutrition matters, discipline matters, but the lack of play has a huge impact on your brain. Because the moment it stops exploring, the moment you stop being curious, your brain made a quiet decision. It chooses efficiency over adaptability. It chooses predictability over growth and protection over performance. And the brain that stops playing starts declining. You don't notice it right away. It kind of shows up slowly. You feel a little tighter, you're slower in your reaction, you're less sharp, yes, less creative, less resilient. And most people blame aging. They just go, oh, I'm just old. But that's not what's happening. Your brain is no longer challenged to adapt. And that's huge because without adaptation, there is no longevity. But the moment you reintroduce play, everything changes. Your brain wakes up, your nervous system becomes more flexible, movement improves, energy shifts, and you feel more alive. Not because you worked harder, because you changed the input. And that changes everything. And today I want to show you why play is so essential for your brain and what play actually is. What it's not, because that's very important to understand, and how to use it and to stay adaptable, capable, and high-performing as you age. Welcome, I'm Heike Fallon, the founder of Expand Health and the creator of the NeuroHP Method. I combine neuroscience, sports therapy, and personal performance coaching to help leaders, athletes, active people just like you optimize their health and performance for longevity and, living longer with more fun. And for 30 years, I've studied the brain and the body and their connection. And today I'm going to share a little bit more about play. But before we go into it, make sure you grab my free PDF guide. You'll find the downloadable link in the description. So let's get started. What is actually play? Most people think play is something extra, right? Something optional, something you do when you have time, right? But from a brain perspective, play is not an activity. It's actually a state. Play truly is exploration without pressure. Let me say it again. Exploration without pressure. There should be no pressure. It's an engagement without required outcome. So there is no clear outcome. And it's a variation driven by curiosity. That's essentially the foundation of play. But for the brain to register something as play, there's 5 elements that have to be present. The first one, it has to be voluntary. So you choose to engage, not forced, not obligated. It's your choice to participate. The second, it has to be intrinsically motivated. So you do it because you're interested. It comes from within, right? Not because you have to perform, not because, somebody else told you that's what you have to do, because you want to do it. The third one, it has to be flexible. There's no single right way to do it. You can adjust, you can change, you can explore. There's no one perfect way to do it. And the fourth one is it has to feel safe to your brain. It has to be low pressure, low threat, because the moment pressure enters, there's actually a shift for the brain. And we'll talk about that later. And the fifth requirement is you have to be engaged. You have to be present, aware. You have to be totally into it, not being distracted by, like a phone or something else. So play is not being entertained. It's about being engaged, intentionally engaged. And this is where most people get a little confused. They think, I work out, I train, I play pickleball, or, I just stay active, and that must be play. But that's not always true. Because just as important to understand what play is also to understand what play is not. So play is not a distraction. Play is not a passive consumption. It's not like, you're checking out from whatever you're doing. It's not something you have to get right. and it's not something you force. So the moment you feel pressure to perform, you're no longer at play. And that brings us to the important question, where does the competitive sports fit in really when it comes down to play? Because you think you're playing a sport, right? And that matters, but competitive sports can be play, but often it isn't. And when we look at the criteria, right, because often it becomes outcome driven, right? You focus on winning. Right there, it's not play. You're trying to avoid mistake and you're trying to be perfect. And the brain shifts out of play because you're not hitting those 5 requirements anymore, because now you're in control, and control reduces adaptability. But if competition still includes curiosity, exploration, responsiveness, then it can still be play. So the lines aren't cutting clear. There's an overlap. There's a gray line, but that is the difference, right? Competition is not the problem. Pressure without play is. So from a brain perspective, play is a state where the brain receives novel input in a safe context. That's it. And that's what allows the adaptation. And because if your brain doesn't feel safe, it doesn't explore. And if it doesn't explore, it doesn't adapt. And without adaptation, there's no long-term health and performance. We constantly need to challenge our brain in adapting. So play is not the absence of structure, it's actually the presence of flexibility. And flexibility keeps your brain alive. And play is absolutely the fastest way to shift your brain from protection to performance. And before we go a little deeper into this, instead of explaining more, I want you to actually feel what play can actually do to your brain. And you might feel it immediately in this one, depends on your interoception, and you may not. So let's just give it a try. So just stand and kind of look around your space, wherever you're at, just kind of look and just explore it. So just kind of pay attention to it and find something you've never noticed. And then shift your attention, right? You might look at something a little closer, look at something a little further, check out the sides and go for little details. Just keep that curiosity. So just kind of, like I said, just kind of look around. I see actually I got to fix my blinds up there. I haven't seen that yet. But so I give you a little bit of time right now. Just kind of explore. And I'm going to be quiet for a minute. And I'm doing it myself as well. So hopefully you follow along. Now, as you look around, I want you to pay attention to your breathing. Don't forget to look far and near. Now pay attention to your shoulders. Are they starting to feel more relaxed? How is your posture? So it's just all about paying attention to that, feeling how your body responds. Does it calm down? Is your breathing settling? Is your posture changing? Is your, tightness releasing a little bit? That shift is your brain updating with small inputs, small new inputs coming in. And that is immediate change. So most people try to understand this, but very few actually feel it. So you can practice that. And that is the difference between knowing and actually practicing and changing. And this is exactly why play matters, because the brain does not change through effort alone. It changes through input. Now you do have to do it. You have to do repetitions, but it changes through input, new input. And when that input is variable, novel, and safe, the brain adapts. Now, Let's also talk about what happens when this is missing, because that is super important. Because, kids play, and if you have kids, then you play with them, but then, slowly as an adult, we just don't play anymore, unfortunately, because it's, where most people start declining is because they don't play anymore. The brain doesn't age because of time, it ages because of lack of novelty, lack of adaptability. And the lack of adaptability is really a brain that is an aging brain. So think about your day. You usually have the same routine, same movements, same environment, and your brain stops receiving new information, which does not update the brain's maps, really, which leads to uncertainty. When the brain senses uncertainty, it prioritizes protection over performance. And that shows up, that protection, in tightness, in fatigue, low energy, reduced focus, slower reaction time, and less confidence in movement. And less confidence in movement means we're moving less. And most people respond the same way. They try to push harder. More workouts, more effort, more discipline. But that doesn't solve the problem, because the problem is not the output, it's the input. Chasing the output without upgrading and changing the input creates decline, because we constantly need to do it, because the brain gets used to the stuff that we're already doing and it makes it efficient, and then it's not a challenge for the brain anymore. And this is where And this is where your brain-based approach becomes different, because we don't just train the body, we train the system that decides what your body is allowed to do. And that system needs variability. It needs novelty, it needs exploration, and it needs play. So let's do another one. Now stand up if you haven't done that yet, and let's take this just one step further. So instead of, let's say, doing a bicep curl, which a lot of people are doing, let's explore that movement a little bit. Okay, so just stand hip width apart. So now we're gonna do a bicep curl, but now we rotate the arm a little further out. We're gonna rotate from the shoulder in, okay? So now you can close your eyes. What happens if you do a bicep curl up here? What happens if you move your arm out? What happens if I do a bicep curl with a circle in the whole movement? Kind of feel around and see how that changes your perception of a bicep curls. Again, I highly recommend to kind of close your eyes and feel where you are in space. We're actually also training proprioception with this. And then we can also open the hand, right? And we can also turn the hand the other way. We can move it back down. Again, there's options. We can do even complex movement. We move the wrist as we do a bicep curl coming up and going back down. So there's lots of options to play around with movement. And key is to also randomly stop, pause, right? And let your body figure it out. It's also a great way to do lots of different things with partners on this, but this just gives you an idea. But it also means you can change movement in your gym, for example. Don't do a bicep curl all in the same speed. Play around with speeds, play around with different body positions, because all this is new input to your brain and from your joints, from your balance system, from your environment, and all that updates your internal map of your arm, of your spatial awareness. Better map means better movement, and your brain needs variety more than intensity. And this is what I see all the time, people doing more, but really getting less out of it because the brain has stopped adapting. I've worked with clients who did everything right. Disciplined, consistent, focused in the gym, but they still felt stuck, tired, disconnected. And one of my clients actually told me she felt like something is missing, right? Everything was just, just so controlled and so scheduled and so structured. And she felt it wasn't a physical, it was just something deeper, but she couldn't figure out what it was. And the truth is, her brain had nothing new to learn from. And so it stopped adapting. It started protecting. And, instead of doing more, we ended up we removed a little bit the pressure. We added exploration, small changes, more visual curiosity in there, more movement variability. And that changed a lot for her. Within weeks, her energy changed and taking a little bit more pressure off and really leaving more space in your day for creativity is so important. So it's not all about structured and, scheduled and predictable. Like, we need the space to explore. And the cool part is she felt like she was herself again, right? Play doesn't just improve performance, it restores your identity. And I'm going to go a little deeper level here, because play is not just physical, right? It shows up in different forms. There's mental play, right? Asking good questions, seeing new possibilities. So it's not always asking, AI, but we need to kind of have conversations too. And in conversation, we call that the social play. You have connections without an agenda. And there's emotional play, right? Allowing expression, let go of that control. There's also environmental play, changing your surroundings, change it up occasionally. And of course, there's creative play, right? Doing something without needing to be perfect, just to participate, just to sometimes a little, maybe sounds as like goofing off, but it's about being aware in that moment and paying attention how you move. Creative play can also be art, right? When there's not necessarily an end goal, when you play around with colors and see where they go and what they're doing, that can be a form of play as well. It can be musical play, right? When you just jamming and you're playing, that's playing without necessarily a specific song. You just kind of going with the flow in the session. That is also play. The key is all of these stimulate your brain. All of these create adaptability. And adaptability is what drives your longevity. I know I've said that before, but I can't say it enough. The goal is not to stay young. The goal is to stay adaptable. Because longevity is not about avoiding decline. It's about maintaining or even improving your ability to adapt. And that requires input. That requires new input. And one of the most powerful ways to create that input is just with play. And it seems so effortless, but it really has such a big impact on your brain. And if you want to age well, stay curious, stay adaptable, keep exploring, because the moment you stop playing, your brain stops getting the valuable input that it needs. And that is where decline begins. The people who age the best are not the most disciplined necessarily, they're the most adaptable. So now you know, go out and play. And if you really enjoyed this video and you think somebody else might benefit from it, please share it. And also follow me, subscribe to my channel. I always release new videos with science-based information, how you can improve your longevity. I'm Heike Fallon, and I hope you start investing in yourself today by starting to simply play. Make time for play. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.